Hey everyone, Trev here with The Darkroom, and in this video I'm going to be talking all things Cinestill when it comes to their color film, and that is the 50D, a daylight balanced film, and their 800T, a tungsten balanced film. I love shooting with both of these, especially the 800T. This is one of my favorite all-around films to shoot with. It's just a lot of fun, really unique. And we also developed this film on a daily basis here at the Darkroom Lab. And we get a lot of questions on how to develop it, how to push it, how to meter for it. And that's mainly because it's a very unique and uncommon type of film, because this is originally a cinema film and Cinestill removed a remjet layer which allows it to be developed as normal C41. So in this video I'm going to be showing you a bunch of different prints which are made on our matte with border paper. And I'll talk about how they are metered, talk about, to give you a good idea how they are metered, how they are pushed, so that maybe this will help you know how to shoot your next roll of Cinestill. The first thing to know is that obviously the daylight balanced film is going to be a little more neutral color, normal color in daylight. It has a little more warmth to it compared to the Cinestill 800T, which is a tungsten balanced film, will make daylight scenes go a little bit cool. So there'll be more blues in the 800T and a lot more warmth in the 50D. So as you can see, it's cooler in the sky and even cooler down here, and a lot more warmth in that 50D. And it really comes down to preference, because in these shots right here, I can't tell a difference. Both of them shot at box speed. There's barely any noticeable grain in good light if you get a good exposure. And these are, again, all shot at box speed, 50 ISO and 800 ISO. This is a good example of a portrait and how it can affect skin tones. As you can see, again, a lot more warmth on his face and the skin tones, and then that blue jacket is not nearly as blue compared to with the 800T. It brings out the blues in his eyes and his jacket and makes the scene a little bit more cool, or a lot cooler, which kind of works for this because it was a winter scene. But it comes down to preference on which you prefer. I actually really like this, but some people like a little bit more warmth. And while these are all shot at box speed, I metered either for the skin tones or the mid-tones, and sometimes even the shadows, depending on what the light was. So for these scenes right here, I would have metered right down here in the bumper area. These are all shot with my Canon Elan 7. Again, just a little bit cooler for the 800T and warmer for the 50D. And same again here. Now, you're going to notice this throughout all of these, so I'll talk about it real quick, and that's halation. This is something that happens with some film. It's a reflection of bright points off of the film base or the pressure plate, and it causes a orange or red glow. And this is a lot more common with Cinestill film because it has a layer that is removed, and that layer helps control that halation. So you will see this halation a lot more with this film. Some people really like it, some people don't, and some people it varies on what your subject is. I don't mind it, and actually here is some examples of halation and how you can avoid it. So this is a scene that was shot in bright daylight. It's backlit, as you can see right here. And then this shot right here, I didn't want that halation, and you can see there's all that halation right there. So I didn't want it, so I reshot it in even light. So in even light, you can control that and you won't see it as much or at all. Here's some more examples of halation. But yeah, you'll see that a lot. Some people really like it. I don't mind it for night scenes. I tried to avoid it with portraits, though. So it just depends. Before I get into pushing the film, I'm going to show what this film looks like Overexposed, because this film does really well. Typically, we recommend people shooting film at box speed, but 800T and 50D is definitely an exception because this film has incredible latitude, which means it can do really well with overexposure. So you definitely want to err on overexposure if you're not sure what your metering should be. Just open up a stop if you're unsure. It's the best way to go. These were shot at 500 ISO. They're both 800T, shot at 500. So almost a stop overexposed because I got them developed normally. And as you can see, they look really good. I actually could have opened up one more stop and most likely, especially for this one, would have been just fine. So this is at almost a one-stop overexposure, and they look really good. This shot right here was metered basically right there, which is a neutral gray. These scenes were easy to meter for. I metered for that neutral gray right there, and then for this one, metered right down in there. And then got them developed normally. They looked really good. I love 800T on foggy days. And then here is some 50D. And this was shot, obviously, in Yosemite. It was shot with a Hasselblad 500C. And for these shots, I actually used an incident meter. And I shot this 50D, which is 50 ISO, at 25 ISO and got it developed normally, which is basically a one-stop overexposure depending on my metering. I just took exposure with my incident meter of the light that's hitting the scene and used that, which means that's a little bit brighter as well. Because this scene was further away, but basically I was metering for the shadows for this one, and as you can see, it didn't even blow out the highlights, and same with this. I love this film. It's just a really unique look, and while it is daylight balanced, it still has a very unique look to it. I especially really like this photo. And then to see the same scene overexposed by a stop, this is 50D right here, and this is 800T. Both of these were shot, this one stop overexposed. This 50D was at 25 ISO, developed normally, and this 800T was shot at 400 ISO, developed normally. And as you can see, they're not really overexposed, especially the 800T, which even has better latitude, in my opinion, than the 50D. So it didn't even blow out those bright highlights in the waves. And as you can see, the 50D is much bluer and much cooler. And the 50D is much warmer. Same here, much warmer in that sand, the 50D is. And then the 800T, definitely cooler sand right there. So you can see the difference between these two. It comes down to preference. I really do like this shot right here. But I just really like that coolness of the 800T. But, you know, it comes down to preference. I'd love to hear what you all think of this, of like which you prefer. Now on to pushing film. I'm going to go in order of pushing from one stop to 2 stops to 3 stops. I'm mainly going to talk about 800T because 800T is the most common film to be pushed because it's going to be great for low light because it's 800 ISO. So I push this film a lot more. I have one example of some 50D pushed, but there's a unique way of pushing it, and I'll put the chart right here. Now, if you're shooting at 800 or lower, like 500 or 400, there's no push. If you're going to push it one stop, you would shoot it at 1250 ISO. If you're going to push it 2 stops in development, you'd shoot it at 1600 ISO. And if you're going to push it 3 stops, you're going to shoot it as 3200 ISO. So it's not the normal way you'd push most film. But this isn't, again, it's not a normal film. And this is the recommendation from Cinestill themselves. So this shot right here, just of a crescent moon, this is Cinestill 800T at 1250 and pushed 1 stop in development. And that's an easy meter. I just basically, this was shot handheld, and I wanted to get the trees and the moon in focus, so I shot around f8, and pushing the film allowed me to do that, and I just metered for the blue, dark blue sky, which worked really well. Here's a low light scene, basically just metered in there and then opened up a stop in my metering. I don't remember exact specs, but this film does really well in light and scenes, low light scenes like this. And then here's another shot indoors. As you can see, indoors it has amazing color balance because it's tungsten based. If you have tungsten light, it's really gonna even out your color. And then the show, I don't push 50D too much. I typically shoot it at box speed or overexpose it by shooting at a lower ISO and getting it developed normally. But here's some examples of this film being pushed one stop. So this 50 ISO shot at 100 ISO and pushed one stop in development. And basically a Sunny 16 these, I metered for the right here, the grass and the blue water, and to see if it matched up with my Sunny 16. Same with these, Sunny 16, and same with that. So as you can see, very good balance, and it still actually has some warmth in there. But let's move on to two stops. This is 800T right here, pushed two stops. So this right here, low light, you can see that blue in there, the coolness, so you can tell it's 800T. Here's another double exposure indoors. All of these are shot handheld. If you see 800T that we post, it's all shot handheld because that's why I would push. If I'm gonna use a tripod, I won't push it. But if I'm gonna shoot handheld, I need to get at a certain shutter speed so I don't have shaky images. So that's why we recommend pushing. This is a double exposure, and then here's another double exposure. All of these were shot with the Canon Elan 7, and this double exposure, I metered. I took the portrait, the silhouette first, metered for the background, and then the second shot was the neon lights, and I metered for the neon lights and opened up one stop in my metering, and that's the end result. I love this film for low light. I love it for double exposures because it just has a really unique look to it. I love all the colors. And last but not least is a side-by-side comparison of both of these film stocks pushed 3 stops. So this will give you a better idea of what the limitations of this film is when it comes to pushing and what works and what doesn't work. Because once you push film 3 stops, especially this film, you're going to get a lot more noticeable grain, a lot more color shifts, and a lot more contrast, especially with 800T. It'll really boost the contrast, really make the grain noticeable, and makes it not as ideal for shooting in daylight. If you're going to shoot this film in daylight, you want to shoot it at box speed or lower and don't push it, as you'll see later on. But yeah, so the 50D right here was shot at 400 ISO and pushed 3 stops in development, and which is more normal of how you do it with other film if you were to push it. And the 800T was shot at 3200 ISO and pushed 3 stops in development. All of these, the 800T was shot handheld, and the 50D was shot on a tripod because it was still too slow of a shutter speed in these low light scenes. So as you'll see, a lot more warmth with the 50D, and then it's a lot cooler with the 800T. And they make completely different results, or give you completely different results. So it just comes down to preference, and I'm always preferred 800T. I just like the unique look of it. And as you can see, it's a little better balanced and indoor light. And it's just a lot more versatile when it comes to low light, because while these don't look that different, this was shot handheld, which is a lot easier. This was shot with a tripod, and you really don't see that big of a difference in the grain unless you get very, very close. And I do like the blues rather than the greens. In low light and with this neon green or neon colors, it made everything go a little bit green, where the 800T stays bluer and cooler. I really like these. These are basically metered for the highlights. Typically when I meter for the highlights, I will open up by a stop or two, which I recommend with this film. Again, it says good exposure latitude. As you can see, this was right at dusk, so you can see more warmth right in there, and a little bit more cool tones with the 800T. But then once you get into daylight, you can really see the difference with pushed film. The 50D does a lot better. This would look better as box speed. It wouldn't be as contrasty. And this 800T went really contrasty because it's pushed 3 stops, and it's not balanced for daylight, so intensified that blue, intensified the contrast. And if you look close, you can see more grain in there. And then last but not least, there's another daylight scene showing you that 50D will do better at daylight, especially when pushed. And 800T, if you're going to shoot it in daylight, you want to shoot it at box speed, and definitely err on overexposure, or you're going to get those strong blues and strong contrast. But this is our video. If you have any questions about this, let us know in the comments below. We would love to help. We have a 2-part blog at thedarkroom.com that shows all of these side by side, gives you push information, gives you more halation information, and like how to avoid it, and what scenes have it and what scenes won't have it. But yeah, we'd love to hear your input. If you have a favorite between these two, if you shoot these two differently, because there are different ways. With this film, we just recommend experimenting, but always erring on overexposure. When in doubt, blow it out. You definitely want to just go brighter with both of these. But yeah, we'd love to see any of your results with these film. Be sure to tag us, hashtag the Darkroom Lab.